Light up your build with Q Plus by NZXT. It fits into 2.5-inch drive slots, comes with 4 individually controlled RGB strips with plenty of connection cables for best routing, and is wonderfully controlled through the CAM software. Get 10% off at nzxt.com, link in the description.
It was only a matter of time until NVIDIA's Pascal architecture finally arrived on notebooks. Their high levels of efficiency virtually guaranteed a perfect fit within the mobile product spaces, and we're now only starting to see what the GTX 10 series can offer gaming notebooks, and so far, things are looking pretty impressive. Today we'll be taking a look at the ASUS ROG G752VS Overclocked Edition, which has a hefty price tag of about $3,000. But it incorporates leading-edge technology and it really doesn't cut any corners. While there is no-nonsense gaming platform, is it reasonable to spend this much on a laptop rather than building a kick-ass gaming PC? Let's find out. A quick glance at the specs, you're getting a quad-core 8-thread Skylake Core i7 6820HK CPU clocked at 2.7 GHz, 64 GB of RAM running at 2400 MHz, a 512GB Toshiba NVMe SSD paired with a 1TB hard drive spinning at 7200 RPM. There's also a matte 17-inch 1080p G-Sync display with a refresh rate of 75Hz, and the star of the show, a fully fledged desktop GTX 1070 8GB video card. The OC edition tagged onto the model's name points towards an out-of-the-box overclock, which you'll pay a premium for. This means the CPU goes up to a maximum of 3.8 GHz, memory at 2400 MHz rather than its standard 2133 MHz, and the GTX 1070's core clock boosts 50 MHz faster. And these settings are default, but they can be scaled back by switching to ASUS's standard mode within the ROG Gaming Center app. The ROG line of high-end gaming notebooks is quite popular within the industry thanks to their numerous price points and well-designed rugged chassis. Seriously, this is by far the best looking and well-built notebooks we've come across in a long time. ASUS has tastefully blended their typical color scheme into the chassis, and as you can see, it's looking hot. I love the illuminated ROG logo as well as the 2 strips on the side, and it looks gorgeous in the dark. There is a bright red grille at the back which hides ASUS's new cooling assembly, which consists of an advanced 3D vapor chamber and a special funnel design that nearly eliminates dust buildup in key areas. The downside is that with all this tech under the hood, it's not a portable laptop by any stretch of the imagination. Weighing it at about 9 pounds, I will guarantee you will have issues lugging this thing around to school, work, or even travel. So that begs the question, is it really worth buying a $3,000 gaming notebook if it isn't even portable? But that's another conversation for another time. The 17-inch 1080p display uses an IPS panel and comes with a matte coat finish. Thank you, ASUS. It's a beautiful screen that produces great colors with excellent viewing angles, but the 1080p resolution coupled with a 75Hz refresh rate is on its way out, since we'll soon see notebooks with 120Hz G-Sync IPS screens. Considering the 17-inch form factor, a 1080p resolution isn't that bad, and the GTX 1070 has no problem pushing every game past that 75Hz mark. I also like that ASUS has reinforced the screen extremely well, as it barely flexes under my testing. You get a full-size LED backlit keyboard with WASD keys exhibiting a subtle red highlight, which should help locating them when gaming. The keys have great travel distance and tactile feedback. Comparing it to the SteelSeries keyboard on the GT7 II from MSI, it doesn't feature RGB lighting or any lighting effects, which I don't mind considering how ASUS is sticking to the ROG color scheme, but is it a real deal breaker? Let us know in the comments down below. Just a bit north of the keyboard, you'll find 5 programmable macro keys, and they can be assigned via the ROG Gaming Center. This is an odd location because it's going to be challenging to access them in the middle of an intense gameplay, and there's plenty of space on the chassis to the keyboard's left. The 6th button activates the XSplit Gamecaster software, plus the ROG button within the numpad activates the ROG Gaming Center. This brings me to my next point, typing experience. While I appreciate the tactile response along with the soft touch surface for your palms to rest, those sharp edges on the lower part of the chassis were so uncomfortable. They made typing almost impossible on a flat surface. Take a look at my hands. Yeah, not so good. I highly recommend an external keyboard. The trackpad is good, the surface resistance is minimal, making it easier for finger movement, along with primary physical left and right buttons which provide excellent response. However, palm detection is missing even with Windows drivers working at their best, but this can be fixed with an update. Given the bulkier chassis, expect a lot of I/O ports. On the left, you'll find a Kensington lock, a pair of USB 3.0 ports, and a Blu-ray drive. Towards the right, there's a power in, a gigabit Ethernet, an HDMI 2.0 connector followed by DisplayPort 1.4, a pair of USB 3.0 ports, a USB 3.1 Type-C connector, and the usual headphone and microphone jacks. I hate to say this, but the integrated speakers on the GT72V are horrible. I blame the placement on the speaker grills. They're located behind the screen hinge, which blocks the sound completely, and trust me, it sounds muffled and unclear. You're much better off using headphones for better content and gaming consumption. Accessing the bottom part of the notebook for in-place upgrades has never been this easier. There is a single screw covered by a rubber flap that holds the cover. Opening that up gives you quick access to the RAM, the hard drives, and there's a metal plate covering 2 PCI slots, but there is a free slot available for expansion. Thank you ASUS for not including a warranty void if removed sticker. Alright, so far I've had mixed feelings about the design of this notebook, but does paying $3,000 do any good in terms of performance? Let's hop into it. Starting with the SSD test, the Toshiba NVMe SSD dished out a little over 1600 megabytes per second on read and just a little over 1100 megabytes per second on writes. Let's move on to gaming. Pretty much most titles at 1080p were dominated by the G752V notebook, even topping out the $5,000 X9 sporting dual 980M GPUs. The same story applies at our 1440p tests, and I expected this because Pascal is no joke. With new GPU architecture comes better power efficiency, but it was not a significant increase compared to Maxwell. Remember, NVIDIA is focused on performance per watt or achieving acceptable battery life while boosting overall performance. That's exactly what happened here. Under light use, including writing the script and watching a few videos, I was able to squeeze just a little over 3 hours. So if you're planning to lug around this notebook around, which I highly suggest you don't, make sure to carry the power adapter, which unfortunately is also on the heavier side. The advanced 3D vapor chamber did a fantastic job cooling the 1070 and the 6820HK CPU. I never experienced any throttling issues, and by the results, it's clear that Pascal cards are a perfect fit for the notebook space. Okay, so what do I consider the ROG G752V gaming notebook to be? I would call it an optional desktop replacement because for one, you would have a tough time lugging this monster around. I'm serious. The typing experience on it was simply terrible due to the sharp edge at the lower part of the chassis, although the keys were excellent. And the speakers were not the greatest given the poor placement. These issues can be solved by plugging in an external gaming keyboard, mouse, and speakers, and throw in an extra monitor. You're set to achieve close to a desktop grade performance. But does that make it a semi-desktop? Its on-desk footprint also takes up more space than some compact cases I've seen. The GTX 1070 is a true star of the show. It's such an awesome GPU, you won't have any issues gaming on it, and given the impressive temperature and acoustic results of this notebook, you're guaranteed a solid computing experience. Even if you wanted to use an external 1440p or 4K screen, it won't have any trouble keeping up. Would you rather consider this notebook as a desktop alternative, or would you rather build a custom desktop? Let us know in the comments down below. I'm Eber with Canucks. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.